This is Michael Woodward, and this is episode 71 of the Jumblethink podcast.
T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Jumblethink podcast. We believe that everyone was created for destiny and purpose, that they have a special and unique gift that they have to offer the world. We discover and explore the stories of those who have chased that big idea and dream and are changing the world around them. Our guest on today's episode is Jonathan Hodgetts. More about Jonathan in a moment. Our guest on Thursday's episode is Eddie Yoon. He is a growth strategist, the founder of Eddie Would Grow, and a speaker. For 18 years, he was a partner at the Cambridge Group, and he worked as a strategy consultant for CEOs, senior leadership teams with Fortune 1000 corporations. He's written a book called Super Consumers, a simple, speedy, and sustainable path to superior growth. Eddie has also been a featured keynote speaker at events around the world. One of the topics in the episode is why you should move away from a brand strategy and start creating a category strategy. It's a really fun discussion, and you're not going to want to miss this episode on Thursday. Jumblethink is all about dreams and ideas. We believe you were created for purpose and destiny, that you have a passion inside you that's going to drive you to greatness. Jumblethink is here to help you along that journey. The journey can be hard, it can be scary, it can be difficult. And having that coach, that consultant to walk along that journey with you can make all the difference. Swing on over to jumblethink.com and click the contact page. Drop us a note. We'd love to hear from you and help you on your journey to create the world you want to live in. Now let's jump into today's episode with Jonathan Hodgetts, founder of Wessex Tuba. I am super excited about today's guest. His name is Jonathan Hodgetts. He's the founder of Wessex Tuba. They manufacture musical instruments. Now, you might think by the name that they only make tubas, but really they make saxophones, they make trumpets, they make all kinds of other brass instruments. And you may not know this about me, but I grew up playing brass instruments. I played trumpet, I played trombone, but I spent most of my time on baritone, euphonium, and tuba, especially tuba. I love the tuba, and to hear the story of how they're innovating, how they're creating instruments, how they're making them more accessible to the market, it's a really powerful story. Jonathan and his team is rethinking not only how instruments are made, where they're made, and how they're distributed, but also he's looking to the past and the future to innovate new instruments that either haven't been seen for generations or are creating the new wave of instruments for the future. Not only is Jonathan the founder of Wessex Tuba, he's a musician himself. He knows what it takes to have a great instrument, and he knows what he's looking for. He's played in the United Kingdom for years throughout various styles of music and bands. In 2010, he started Wessex Tuba. So let's dive into this conversation I had with Jonathan Hodgetts and learn more about what he's creating and why he's so passionate about it. Hey, Jonathan, how are you doing today?
Oh, very well. Nice to speak to you, Michael.
It's great to have you on the podcast. I grew up as a brass musician in high school and elementary school and everything like that. And so through the years, I've been playing music and stumbled on Wessex Tuba, and I quickly became a fan when I saw what you were doing.
Well, thank you. We're trying to move forwards all the time.
So tell us a little bit of your background, because you didn't just jump into building a musical instrument company. You actually are a musician first. So tell us a little bit about your background as a musician.
Right. I first learned to play when I was 12 years old. Basically, I realised at school it seemed to have certain advantages being in the school band. So I thought, play an instrument. And the tuba was available, and I went straight in for the tuba. I saw it in the music cupboard and said, I want to play that. And I've been playing tuba ever since. And I played all through school up till I left. I stopped for a couple of years for other interests. And then the local brass band said, can you come and help us out? I went and played with them, and I've been playing ever since. Initially, I was playing with brass bands. As most people in the UK, most brass players in the UK start with brass bands. But when I was about 40, I went to a concert at the Royal Albert Hall, a proms concert with a girlfriend, and I really got into classical music then and wanted to play with an orchestra. So I went back and did more practice and training and took more lessons, and eventually got into an orchestra.
Wow.
And I'm still playing orchestrally now. But I'm not so much playing in brass bands now. I'm more playing in wind bands.
Now, you obviously have started this really cool company called Wessex Tubas, but the name makes it sound like that all you make is tubas. You do much more than that.
We now sell the whole range of brass instruments and even the occasional saxophone as well. So it's gone a bit further than I originally intended. When I first started the company, I intended it just to be selling tubas. And then friends said, well, can you get me a trombone, or can you get me a trumpet, or whatever? So I started getting them and selling them as well. It has grown to cover the whole range, but tubas are still our main focus. That's what we sort of concentrate on developing and are moving forwards with.
That's really cool. Tell us that origin moment when you were like, I see an opening here. There's a lot of high-end instruments. There's a lot of just really poorly manufactured instruments. I think I can do something here. Tell us about that story.
Well, I'd just married a Chinese wife, and I just had this idea. Well, I've got someone here that can actually talk to the Chinese in their own language and negotiate with. Wouldn't it be cool to actually start selling tubas? So that was the sort of moment, and we took it from there. It was initially visiting a lot of different factories in China and working out where was the best place to get them made, and eventually got established.
In that process, a lot of people will look at it and say, oh, made in China, especially in the US. There's this whole picture of made in China, and it's really, really a negative picture. And it's marked with China is cheap, or it's not quality, or you're not going to get the customer service. In your experience, as you've approached this, as you've built a company around actually going in and helping develop the instruments and giving feedback and creating quality instruments, how have you been able to come in and really see a different picture of the possibilities of what could be made in China and what it can offer to musicians that may not be able to go buy a $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000 instrument?
Well, I think in the past, Chinese instruments were of poor quality, but they are moving forwards all the time. And I've seen a great improvement in the 6 odd years that Wessex Tubas has been going. But one of the things that people don't understand about China is they can make really good quality, or they can make rubbish. Basically, they're very cost conscious. They won't go to greater effort than they have to go. And if the customer, the dealer in the West, doesn't state their requirements very precisely, they'll probably make it cheaply to obviously increase their profit margin. So one of the things I learnt from my Chinese wife is I need to really state what my quality standards are and what I expect from them, and really enforce that they do produce the goods up to our standards. So once you do that, then they can produce good quality instruments. But they're basically not going to spend a lot of extra money making high quality instruments if they feel that the customer will accept a low quality. And I think a lot of the dealers selling in the West just place an order, get the instruments, and they're not really stating their requirements, and therefore the quality is not up to what we really like. But one of the things that Wessex has done, which I believe no other company does, is actually regularly go to the factory and discuss with the production exactly how to make the instruments and what our standards are.
Well, one of the things I love is you have a really active social presence, both on Facebook and other places. And you share some great videos of you going right into the factory and checking the quality and making sure that it's up to the standards that you expect. And you know, a lot of these distributors of companies, they're just placing the order, they're getting the instrument, and they're just trying to offload it, sell it as quickly as they can make their profit. You have a very hands-on engagement with what you're creating and the companies that you work with and the distribution channels that you have. How has that for you in the innovation space, being able to think outside the box of what everyone else is doing and create something that's new and unique and of a quality that's being unmatched in China?
Well, I think one of the things is being a tuba player and a musician myself, I sort of seen where the gaps are in the market and what instruments are not being made by anyone. And one of my ambitions with Wessex Tubas has been to fill in those gaps and to make all these great instruments from the past available for people to play again. My visit in the factory means I've got a very close relationship with the production, and like I see them, I spend a week with them every quarter. So we're good friends as well as business. And once you get to know them at the factory, nothing's too much trouble really. They'll do anything I want to make the instruments exactly as Wessex requires. So that has really raised the quality and enabled me to produce a lot of unique and unusual instruments.
Well, let's talk about some of those interesting and unique instruments. I've been watching what you're creating with the tornister. I think that's how you say it, tornister.
Tornister, that's right, yeah.
Tell us about some of the other instruments and how they're different than what you might see a Yamaha or King company creating.
Well, what we do really with brass instruments, you don't want to completely reinvent the wheel. So we'll start off with the original instrument. Usually a great instrument from the past, which is no longer in production, and then we'll look at how can we actually make a new one and improve it better. Not just make a copy of that 100-year-old tornister tuba, but actually make it a modern, updated version of it for the modern tuba player. And the tornister is an instrument which was made for the Austro-Hungarian army originally as a backpack tuba. But it now makes a great travel tuba, and for people taking on airlines, for example, and travel around the world and play in hotel rooms, and it's also getting very popular for playing jazz as well, because the players can move around with it and they've got eye contact with their audience, and when they're using amplifiers, the fact that it's small doesn't really matter. So that's a really plus point. So I think. The big difference is for us from those big companies is they need to see lots of sales and they need to be pretty certain before they'll move forwards and produce a new instrument. Where we're more likely to try something and see how it goes. And one of the things is the factory in China is probably the biggest brass factory in the world. They don't just manufacture for Wessex, they manufacture for numerous companies, including some of the big names. But it means they've got all these tooling and mandrels and parts available. So out of their toolkit, as it were, they can make virtually anything.
Tell us about some of those other unique instruments that you guys are maybe bringing back or evolving from a vintage status to a modern status.
Well, as well as the tornister, we brought back the Ophiclyde, which of course was very, very popular in the 19th century, but none been made in the 20th century until we reintroduced.
Wow.
And that produces the correct sound for composers such as Berlioz and Mendelssohn, and therefore it's great to make a modern version available, because the few old ones left around are obviously getting rather worn out and should be in museums and not being on the concert platform. So that's become very popular. And there are other ones. We're just bringing out the American Civil War over-the-shoulder tuba, wow, which will be really great for all these reenactment bands. Rather than using an instrument that's 150 years old, they can actually get a modern instrument that plays well to use, but still recreate the sound and the appearance of the original.
As I look through your different product lines and different instruments, one of the things that stood out to me is the sheer amount of options that you have. You can get it as a lacquer or a silver, and every model line seems to have tons of options, which also opens up different price points to the end user. They can get a raw instrument, they can get a lacquered instrument. How has price point impacted the decisions you make as you bring offerings to the table? Because it seems like you don't want to just build for an elite player, but you also want that entry-level player. You want to start the relationship early and start bringing them into the Wessex family and having them as a musician that's using their instrument from day one to the day that they may be sitting in a major symphony or orchestral hall.
One of my things is I want to make the instruments affordable. I don't want them to price them out of most people's range. I want, the kid just leaving high school to actually be able to buy their own euphonium, and but I still want them to be able to play at a standard they can go right up to a professional level. So our big aim is to all the time to try and keep that price affordable, but to give them a path to professional standard at the same time. One of the advantages we've got over those big companies is that they've got to have an extensive dealer network, and every time an instrument gets passed from A to B, B to C, etc., then obviously the price increases. So if we can get it made and then sell it straight to the end user, we can sell it at a much more reasonable price.
That's one of the things that's really cool is that you see your instruments being used and being able to be incorporated into music programs that may have started to die out because of funding and other things. They're able to afford your instruments at the high school level still and be able to give a quality sound to those students so that they're able from day one to be using a world-class instrument.
When we first started, I think the instruments have always played well, but the actual necessarily the quality of the build wasn't all that I wanted when I first started. So one of our big things has been to try and perfect the building and the quality of them. So not only do they play well, but they're made well and last for many years to come. And I think we're getting there very quickly.
And part of that seems to be the feedback that you're getting from the musician themselves. You're collaborating with those players, you're hearing their feedback, and you're applying it to the designs that you have. I've seen posts where you talk about, in generation one of this specific model, we had this specific thing that players didn't like. Maybe it was where a thumb rest was, or maybe it was a specific slide design not having the spacing to expand out as much as they want. And you've responded to that. So you really seem to be a brand that's all about the musician and giving them the experience that they desire. How has that collaboration with the people that play your instruments evolved your company and the instruments that you're creating?
Well, all the time, where not only do I go exhibiting around various events to obviously try and sell them, but it's great to actually get first-hand feedback from all the people trying them. I haven't got an exclusivity of good ideas, so if someone comes to me with a good idea to make an improvement to it, or it could be for a completely new model, I'm all ears and really happy to listen to them, and if we possibly can make that improvement or produce that new model, we will. And I think that's another thing we differ from some of the big companies, which set their design and that's it. You accept it as it is, and that's how it is. But we're always going to try and make it that bit better all the time.
There are so many competitors out there. In the tuba world, there's Miraphone, there's Melton, there's Yamaha, there's King. There's so many different brands across all the different instrument spaces that you sell. How are you able to get the traction where players are noticing you and saying, this is an instrument that I can really become in love with playing, that I can really enjoy, when there are so many different competitors out there who are established, that have the recognition, that have the name, that people recognize them and go, oh yeah, I want that Miraphone, I want that Yamaha. How are you able to break into this market and start getting some traction with players where they start going, this is a brand that we can really get behind?
I think it's a multi-stage approach. It's just a bit by bit. We've got to give people the chance to try them and see how good they are. And then when they start getting into local bands, other people try them, and often one sale leads to another, which leads to another. It amazes me how we make a sale to maybe one particular town, then we see a whole flurry of sales to that one town afterwards. obviously they've been showing it around to all their friends, and their friends start ordering them as well. So bit by bit it spreads. But it's a long process, and it's probably going to take us many years to catch up those big brands. But I think we are moving forwards quite quickly.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about the music industry as a whole. You started the company in 2010. You've been playing music for a long time. I don't know what it's like in Europe, but in the States, we've seen a decline of our music programs in the school, whether it's funding, whether it's just understanding of how the arts play into education. We've really seen this space of the woodwinds, the brass, the strings, see a hit there where people are going, oh, there's just not an appreciation of this anymore. There's not a need for it, or there's not a budget. How have you, through your years, and especially as a business owner in this space, really seen the landscape change in the music industry and the amount of players that are coming through and getting involved?
Well, in the UK, it's been very much, there was a big schools musical instrument program in the past, like when I was a kid, and I would never got the opportunity to play if there hadn't have been. But that has dropped out very much so, and nowadays in the UK, it's very much dependent on the local band having a training band and teaching the kids to play and such like. But one of the things I think we can help with Wessex is just to make the instruments more affordable, so they can get to play a good instrument and make music. I do think that what's out there is overpriced, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make it affordable so that more people can make music.
What do you think we can do as a community of musicians to help foster getting more musicians involved in the world of musician, or young kids or even grown-ups really interested in being musicians again? There was recently an article, I think in the Washington Times, talking about guitar sales and interest in guitars decreasing. And so it's not just, your traditional band instrument or orchestra instrument. We're also seeing a decrease in the desire for players as a whole. What can we as musicians, as brands that are manufacturing, as individuals, what can we do to help foster a community that gets more people involved in music and really rekindle that passion again?
Yeah, so that's a difficult one. I think we need to somehow make it more interesting, more attractive to the youngsters, and make them realise that it's not just the playing music itself. It's all that goes around it. It's all the opportunities that arise as a result of that, and the making new friends and being part of a group. There's nothing else other than music where you can be like a group of 100 people all working towards a common target, like an orchestra playing a piece of music. It's an experience which like none other, and I think we need to make people realise that is the case. It's a great team activity.
Yeah, I can really relate to that as a person that grew up playing music from the time I was 4 and 5 playing piano to the time that I was in band in 4th and 5th grade. And throughout my high school experience, there was a bond that was deeper than other groups that I saw often. There was a kindred spirit and a place of belonging for people that were involved with music. This community was more than just the music, but that music brought us together and created a team and a unity that was pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think there's nothing else quite like it, and you're actually working to a common goal to try and make that piece of music live, which, it's a wonderful thing.
Now, we talked a little bit about innovation. I want to dive a little bit deeper into that. When you're creating these instruments, whether it's bringing back a vintage design or evolving a modern design, what are some of the processes that you take in evolving these instruments? Taking a classic design like the tornister and making it something that a jazz tubist can use or a traveling musician can use. What are the kind of things that you're asking and thinking and doing in that iteration process with the factory in China to make it an instrument that people just begin to use on a regular basis and accept, because it's so different than what they may be used to?
Well, it's a matter of we look at the instrument and we obviously want to at least keep the good characteristics and improve on them as far as we can. And then we need to look at what the modern musician will want and anything it doesn't provide, and make enhancements accordingly. Then it's very much a matter of marketing to actually get to people to understand how they might be able to use it. I think social media and Facebook is a very good way of holding an interactive discussion with people of what they actually want.
Let's talk about the future of Wessex Tubas. You've expanded past tubas over the last several years. You're innovating. You're creating these new products. You're doing some really cool stuff. Where do you want to take the company next? What are the spaces that you want to fill, and how can people really begin to encounter your instruments, play them, try them out, and become part of the musicians that are using your amazing instruments?
Well, we've been working at building up the range and building up the quality, and I think we're almost there now. So we've got a great range of instruments, and the quality is now at a standard which, I'm proud of. I'm quite happy to play the instruments every day myself. I do. I play my own instruments every day, so I've got real life experience of how they perform, and I think the main thing is that people have got to try them and see them and get to realise that they play just as well as the Yamaha or however expensive ones that they could get otherwise. And I tend to think, why would you want to spend, I don't know, 15,000 on an expensive Yamaha when you could probably have say a C tuba, an F tuba, and a Shimbasso all for the same money, and you've got all those options for a variety of music making for the same amount of money. So to me, it's a bit of a no-brainer to me. But we've got to convince people that they will do the job. So one of the things I'm going to be very much doing now we've got the range sorted is we plan to do a bit more touring around the States, because it's such a big area. We've got our store in Michigan, but I realise that that's a long way for lots of people to actually go to Michigan to visit and try the instruments.
Right.
So I am planning that we do a lot more touring around the States and exhibiting at events. So, for example, next February we're going to go TMEA in Texas to give them a chance to try, which we've never done before. And I'm hoping we can do all parts of the States over the next couple of years.
Now, one of the things you mentioned is that one of the ways you keep the prices low is by basically being a company that provides instruments directly to the musician. And you just mentioned the complexities of the United States being so large and people being able to encounter that your instruments. Do you think you'll expand into different distribution channels, or do you think you're always going to stay just directly to the consumer, where they can contact you directly, order the instrument they want, talk to you, get their answers from you directly, and then be able to get the right product for themselves?
Well, I've got a sort of vision of a bit of a different network to the traditional one, in that possibility we have agents in different parts of the States. So it'll be a local agent, which would not necessarily keep a large stock of instruments, but would have a few that people could visit and try out the instruments. And obviously, if they like them, then the agent can order and get them supplied. So we actually haven't got multiple inventories in multiple stores around the States, but there are places more local to people for them to try them.
I think one of the things that sets you apart from so many different brands is the fact that you're not just accepting the status quo way of doing things. You are looking for fresh ways to do it, whether it's how you manufacture and your involvement there or how you distribute the instruments. You're kind of a little bit of a maverick from the standpoint of you're not doing it the standard way. What has that taught you when you go against the grain of the standard way, the way everyone else is doing it, and kind of carve out your own path?
Well, I just it's just come natural to me. I suppose it's just the way I thought was the best way to do it. I thought with the modern technology we've got now, we don't need to follow the traditional path. And I think the days of the local music store must be numbered, because there's just not enough customers in one local area.
Right.
That's the only way you can get enough customers is to cover a large area, and by using the internet ostensibly.
How can somebody find your instruments and make an order, or how can they connect with you? Where can they find you?
Well, we've got our main website, wessex-tubas.com. So the first place is to actually look at that. And if they want to sort of communicate, we can obviously respond to emails or phone calls, or they can go to the Facebook page, the Wessex Tubas Facebook page, and start a discussion there. And like I say, I find it really useful to actually do hold discussions with people and see what they really do want. Often products we bring out are due to interaction with customers, and that's what we hear that people want, so that's the way we go. Sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not. I won't say that every product we bring out is going to be a roaring success. Some are probably not going to be great sellers, but other ones are, and you're never really quite sure until it happens.
Let's dive into some rapid fire questions. These are questions I ask every guest. What is a tip you would give someone with a big idea or dream and they simply don't know where to start?
I would say they should sit down and discuss it with their family, friends, someone that they feel can give them good advice, and build a plan of how they want to achieve it.
What is one change you want to see in the world?
An end to violence and war. I think wars and violence of all sorts doesn't achieve anything, and I wish people would just learn to civilly discuss things with each other rather than start beating them over the head.
You're building a really cool company and you're doing some amazing things. What do you want your legacy to be?
I hope the legacy will be that Wessex was a company that created a great range of good playing instruments at a price that people can afford. And it'd be nice to think that there'll be tubas being played with Wessex on the bell in 100 years' time.
Who or what inspires you?
A company which quite inspires me is Apple, the tech company Apple. That's another company which has not followed convention and has, expanded the boundaries and continues to do so. So I think they're quite inspirational.
Now, I didn't put this in our questions that I was going to ask because I didn't think about asking it. Often we ask our guests about where somebody should visit. Maybe they're from New York City or maybe they're from Boston. You are from England and you're from west of London. If somebody's visiting the area where you're located, where are some places they need to go?
Well, we're only an hour from London, and so they need to see all the sights around London, the Buckingham Palace and the Tower of London, and all the great places in London. There's so much to see there; you could go on forever. And locally, there's Salisbury Cathedral, the tallest spire in UK at least, maybe in Europe, and that is really worth seeing. And that's a place that's close to my heart because I regularly play there with the orchestra.
Oh, that's cool.
And of course, another place that's nearby to visit is Stonehenge, which is world famous.
What are you currently reading, watching, or listening to?
I tend to listen to mostly classical music. Take yesterday evening, I was listening to Mahler's Symphony, and Mahler's one of my favourite composers.
You've done a lot over the years. You're building an incredible brand. You're doing some really cool stuff. What is one dream you're still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
I suppose one of my dreams is to see a band playing in the Royal Albert Hall on Wessex instruments. So and winning a major contest on Wessex Instruments. So that's a dream still to be fulfilled. I hope that will happen in the not too distant future.
It has been a lot of fun chatting with you. I love what you're building. One of these days, I'm going to get one of those tornisters and get back into playing brass instruments. Thanks so much for taking time out and sharing your story.
Oh, it's nice to speak to you, Michael.
Once again, I want to thank today's guest, Jonathan Hodgetts, founder of Wessex Tuba, for taking time out to share his story and what they're creating. If you want to check out more of what Jonathan and Wessex Tubas are doing, swing on over to jumblethink.com, check the episode notes, and you can find links to their website and all their social networking channels. On Thursday's episode, our guest is Eddie Yoon. He's a growth strategist, the founder of Eddie Would Grow, and a speaker. He was a partner at the Cambridge Group for 18 years, and his specialty was a strategy consultant for CEOs and senior leadership teams within Fortune 1000 companies. He's written an incredible book called Super Consumers, a simple, speedy, and sustainable path to superior growth. In the episode, we talk about business struggles with growth and how to overcome them. We also dive deep into brand strategy versus category strategy and how you can use category strategy to grow your business. It's a fun episode. Make sure you check it out this Thursday. We want to go deeper into the conversation around ideas, dreams, and really reaching the full potential of who you are. Swing on over to Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Make sure to follow and like us there and join into the conversation. Thanks again for listening. It means the world to me that you would take time out to listen to these episodes. I hope it's encouraged you and given you some steps that you can take on your journey to chase that big idea and dream. Now get out there, take that first step, and create something amazing.
Vous êtes une autre personne. Les mères de famille, les enfants, peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps. Vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.